Along with bombing Syria, Israel recently also bombed North Lebanon overnight. And one of the reasons I mention this is because the U.S. is constantly warning that, oh my God, Iran is the most destabilizing actor in the region. Well, it's actually Israel that bombed recently Syria, Lebanon, and within Gaza, its own territory under its own control. It seems to be a lot bigger problem in the Middle East. And that's one of the reasons Ben and Jerry's, a company, decided to stop selling their ice cream in the occupied regions of the West Bank. And while the owners of Ben and Jerry's are no longer Ben and Jerry, Ben and Jerry published an op-ed in the New York Times endorsing the move by the company that they formed, that has now been bought by a different company. But Ben and Jerry's, I still believe, is based in Vermont. Again, as I note the last time I talked about this story, antiwar.com, who I work for, has received donations in the past from Ben Cohen, one of the founders of Ben and Jerry's. And, just want to make that known, although that that in no way affects my analysis on the issue. I said that in a way, this really isn't a big deal. We're just talking about not selling one brand of ice cream to a few 100,000 people who live in, the occupied territories of the West Bank. I'm not even sure if people in that region really like Ben and Jerry's or not. However, Ben and Jerry, I believe, are both Jewish, and so maybe it was a popular ice cream company. I mean, people like Ben and Jerry's. Ben and Jerry are Jewish. Maybe they did have a large standing in the West Bank or something like that. But at the same time, there's not 100, but there's dozens of companies that make really good ice cream. Blue Bunny, absolutely fantastic. So why the people of the West Bank are so upset and really care? It seems like they should kind of just have, well, you're gonna have less money now, you're gonna sell less ice cream, such to be you, Ben and Jerry's. But instead, the response by Israel has been to literally, or at least by their own quotations, launch a maximum pressure campaign against Ben and Jerry's. And so it's blowing this whole thing up into a giant ice cream war, and Israel's going to be the one that loses most from this. At the end of the day, it's very obvious what Israel is doing are human rights abuses. People just saw the bombing of Gaza, the public opinion polling is changing. I mean, this is a statement from Israel. They say that their soldiers in the West Bank shot a Palestinian because he approached troops with an iron bar in his hand. Well, that sounds to me like as much of an execution as some kind of police force. And so I don't think this maximum pressure campaign and making a big deal out of this is going to help Israel. And so while I initially thought that this might not be a big deal, I think this is actually going to be a very big deal. And that because people like Ben and Jerry's, because they're seen as, in the United States, they have a reputation as like a humanitarian, kind of hippie-ish people. The company, I always see ads about like, they don't pay their CEO X times more than, their janitors and stuff like that. And so, to try to slander a company that has such a progressive reputation and Jewish leadership, or, Jewish founders, as being anti-Semitic is going to be a stretch, and is, I think, going to be a real blow to Israel's anti-boycott, divestment, and sanctions narrative. And while again, initially I didn't think this would be a huge idea, this could be another changing point in at least the American discourse around Israel. So the ice cream wars could be a bigger deal than I had initially thought, but I'll continue to look at and follow that story, especially as Israel's maximum pressure campaign is maybe not netting like any real victories for their PR, but at least against Ben and Jerry's or their parent company in states like Florida, Texas, and New York, which are looking to divest again from Ben and Jerry's and its parent company. All right. that's the show for the week, everybody. I hope you enjoy it. We got some great stuff coming up next week. I'm really excited about some of the episodes I have planned. I had to do some rearranging, and so the planned interview I have for today got delayed, but it will be out next week. And like I said, you guys are absolutely gonna love it. So make sure you subscribe to the show somewhere. That way you don't miss the show. YouTube, Odysee, Rumble for audio or video versions. Audio's up anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Libertarian Institute is where the show is hosted, so libertarianinstitute.org for a full archive of my work that I put out as the news editor of the Libertarian Institute, and that includes the daily news roundup that I write every day. Social media accounts, Facebook, MeWe, and Twitter. Donate to the show if you can. Me and Will are putting in a lot of work to put out some, great products. But the more, we're getting financially from the show, the more we could put into it, also including investing more money into the show. So the links to Subscribestar, Patreon, and Bitcoin Cash are in the show notes everywhere. So think about giving to the show if you can. And I really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be back with more stuff next week.